Scott Carl Steiner was born on July 29, 1962, in the humble town of Bay City, Michigan, a place far from the bright lights of professional wrestling, yet the starting point for one of its most unforgettable figures. From an early age, Scott showed a fierce determination and natural athletic talent that set him apart. Wrestling wasn't just a hobby for him, it was part of who he was, shared with his brother Rick and deeply ingrained in their upbringing. Raised with Midwestern values like hard work, discipline, and relentless competitiveness, Scott embraced wrestling as more than just a sport. It was a challenge he loved, both mentally and physically. By high school, it was clear he wasn't just another athlete, he was a rising force ready to make his mark. The Amateur Wrestling Foundation, college and beyond. Scott's dedication to wrestling carried him to the University of Michigan, a powerhouse in collegiate athletics. Wrestling at the university level isn't for the faint of heart. It's a grueling test of technique, strength, and endurance, where only the most disciplined and talented can thrive. Scott wasn't just there to participate, he was there to dominate. Over his college years, he developed a wrestling style that combined the finesse of technical skill with the raw power that would become his hallmark. Becoming an All-American was a defining milestone. This distinction is reserved for the best collegiate wrestlers in the nation, highlighting Scott's elite status. It wasn't just about winning matches, it was about mastering the art of wrestling in its purest form. The discipline he honed in college, studying opponents, refining moves, and building mental toughness, laid the groundwork for his future success in professional wrestling. This background is often overlooked when fans think of Scott Steiner, especially when recalling his later, Big Poppa Pump, persona. But those years of amateur wrestling are key to understanding his ability to execute complex moves and his explosive athleticism. He wasn't just a muscle-bound showman, he was a trained athlete with a foundation in one of the most demanding sports. Entering the pro wrestling world, the Continental Wrestling Association. Scott's professional wrestling journey began in 1986, stepping into the Continental Wrestling Association, CWA. This was a time when professional wrestling was both a growing entertainment spectacle and a tough business. Wrestling in the CWA meant grinding through smaller venues, long travel, and a steep learning curve. For Scott, these early days were about more than just showing off strength, they were about finding his identity in the ring. He wrestled under his real name, Scott Steiner, and while he showed flashes of potential, the journey was anything but smooth. Like many wrestlers starting out, he had to prove himself match after match, often in front of smaller, less forgiving crowds. These formative years tested his resolve and gave him the kind of hands-on experience you can only get by being out there, night after night. The CWA helped Scott understand the nuances of the business, the psychology of matches, how to engage a crowd, and the importance of charisma. This period was critical. It laid the groundwork for his future success and helped him learn the craft from the ground up. It's easy to forget that even the biggest stars had to start somewhere, and for Scott, the CWA was that first stepping stone. The birth of a tag team legend, the Steiner brothers. The turning point in Scott's career came when he joined forces with his older brother Rick to form the Steiner brothers. Wrestling tag teams aren't always just about two wrestlers sharing the ring, they're about chemistry, trust, and combined skill. The Steiner brothers had all of that and more. From the very beginning, Scott and Rick's pairing felt different. Their background in amateur wrestling gave them an edge. They were technically sound but also incredibly powerful and explosive. This wasn't just a team relying on flashy moves or gimmicks, they brought real wrestling credibility to the tag team division. Their style was a rare mix of athleticism and brute force, something that made them stand out in every promotion they worked in. More than just brothers, Scott and Rick were a unit. They had an almost instinctive understanding of each other's moves and timing, which translated into electrifying performances in the ring. This chemistry made them one of the most dynamic and dominant tag teams in professional wrestling history. Fans weren't just watching two guys team up, they were witnessing a partnership built on family, skill, and a shared hunger for success. Dominating the tag team scene, NWA, WCW, and WWF. The Steiner brothers' rise was swift and unstoppable. They became fixtures in some of the biggest wrestling organizations of the time, from the National Wrestling Alliance, NWA, to World Championship Wrestling, WCW, and eventually the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, now WWE. What made their matches special was their blend of technical skill and sheer physicality. Scott's athleticism, combined with Rick's hard-hitting style, made every bout feel intense and unpredictable. Their moves were both crowd-pleasers and serious wrestling maneuvers, appealing to hardcore fans and casual viewers alike. One of Scott's signature moves, the Frankensteiner, became legendary. Imagine a wrestler flipping an opponent over their head with perfect timing and precision, a move that requires incredible agility and strength. Scott executed it with breathtaking finesse, and it quickly became a highlight in their matches. This move showcased that despite his bulk, Scott was incredibly agile, a rare combination that few wrestlers could match. The Steiner brothers battled some of the most iconic teams of the era, the Road Warriors, Harlem Heat, and the Nasty Boys, to name a few. These rivalries weren't just about winning championships. They were about defining an era of tag team wrestling. The brothers won multiple tag team championships across these promotions, each reign adding to their growing legacy. Breaking out on his own, the shift to singles wrestling. By the late 1990s, Scott Steiner was already a household name thanks to the incredible success of the Steiner brothers. But anyone who knows Scott will tell you, he was never the type to rest on his laurels. The tag team scene had given him fame and respect, but Scott wanted more. He craved the spotlight all to himself, the chance to prove he could be a dominant force on his own terms. Making the jump from tag team wrestler to singles competitor isn't an easy path. Many wrestlers struggle to find their footing when left without the safety net of a partner. For Scott, however, it was an opportunity to reinvent himself, and he grabbed it with both hands. This transition wasn't just about changing his role in the ring, it was about evolving as a performer. Scott recognized that to stand out in singles competition, especially in the intense atmosphere of late 1990s wrestling, he had to become a bigger-than-life character. The wrestling world was rapidly changing. Characters with unique personalities, wild promos, and theatrical flair were becoming the stars of the era. Scott needed to craft a new identity, one that matched his already imposing physical presence and intense persona. At this point in his career, Scott was no stranger to hard work or innovation. His amateur wrestling background gave him the technical skills, but the singles scene demanded more: charisma, showmanship, and the ability to connect with the audience. So, he began the process of transformation, both physically and mentally. The result was one of the most dramatic and memorable character evolutions in professional wrestling history. The birth of Big Poppa Pump, a new persona emerges. Enter Big Poppa Pump. Scott Steiner's new wrestling alter ego that took the world by storm. Where once he was known for his impressive strength and technical ability, Big Poppa Pump was all about power, confidence, and pure swagger. His transformation was eye-catching and impossible to ignore. He bulked up even more, his muscles swelling to almost cartoonish proportions. His skin took on a deep, almost unnatural tan that added to the visual impact, while his hair was bleached a striking platinum blonde, styled in a way that screamed intensity. But it wasn't just the physical changes that defined Big Poppa Pump. His wardrobe was unlike anything fans had seen from Scott before, a mix of chainmail vests, leather pants, and oversized sunglasses. This was a man who wanted to be seen, to command attention the moment he stepped into the arena. He brought a raw energy that filled the room, his presence larger than life both in and out of the ring. Big Poppa Pump was brash, cocky, and downright intimidating. He wasn't shy about talking himself up, often boasting about his strength, his size, and how no one could touch him inside the squared circle. This persona was a perfect reflection of Scott's own larger-than-life personality but dialed up to 11. Fans either loved him for his confidence and showmanship or hated him for his arrogance and intensity. Either way, he was unforgettable. Promos that defined a generation, Steiner Math and beyond. One of the most enduring legacies of Scott Steiner's Big Poppa Pump era is his promos. If you've ever seen a wrestling promo that left you laughing, shaking your head, or just plain bewildered, there's a good chance it was from Scott Steiner. His promos weren't just speeches, they were performances full of energy, unpredictability, and a unique sense of humor. Among the many unforgettable moments, the Steiner math promo stands out as a cultural phenomenon. In this now iconic segment, Scott unleashed a bizarre but entertaining mathematical breakdown of the odds he gave himself in an upcoming match. He threw around percentages and probabilities in a way that was half comedy, half bravado, delivering lines like, "I'm 49.5%, and I'm going to take your percentage and raise your 400%, then I'm going to add 200% for the rest of your life." It was a promo that defied the traditional wrestling script. No neat rhymes, no polished speeches, just pure Scott Steiner, in all his chaotic glory. Fans couldn't help but quote it, meme it, and share it across the internet for years after. It was hilarious, confusing, and oddly genius, perfectly encapsulating the wild persona Scott had created. Beyond Steiner math, Scott's promos were often a roller coaster ride. He could switch from anger to humor in seconds, throwing out insults, threats, and absurd boasts that kept audiences hooked. His voice, booming and filled with intensity, made even the simplest lines sound like a major event. Promos are a key part of wrestling storytelling, and Scott Steiner mastered the art of making every word count, even if the words sometimes didn't make much sense. Championship glory, WCW World Heavyweight Champion. Big Poppa Pump wasn't just a flashy gimmick, Scott Steiner backed up the persona with some serious in-ring accomplishments. His singles career reached its pinnacle in 2000 when he won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, the most prestigious title in World Championship Wrestling and a symbol that he had truly arrived as a top-tier star. Holding the WCW World Heavyweight Championship put Scott in the spotlight like never before. This was no longer just about tag teams or supporting roles, he was the main event, the guy everyone was either cheering or booing. The title reign was marked by fierce rivalries with some of the era's biggest names. Matches were intense, brutal, and showcased Scott's combination of raw strength and surprising agility. Scott's championship reign came during a turbulent time for WCW, with the company facing stiff competition from WWE. But even amid the chaos, Big Poppa Pump stood tall as one of the most dominant and entertaining figures. His matches kept fans engaged and his promos kept them talking. Winning the title was both a reward for his hard work and a validation of his reinvention as a singles wrestler. The WWE years, injuries and challenges. When World Championship Wrestling, WCW, was bought out by WWE in 2001, the wrestling world was buzzing with anticipation. Fans expected some of WCW's biggest stars to make a seamless transition to WWE's grand stage, and Scott Steiner was no exception. After all, here was a man who had dominated as Big Poppa Pump, a four-time world champion with charisma and an unforgettable presence. The wrestling community was excited to see how Scott's brash persona and explosive style would translate into WWE's more polished and theatrical environment. However, things didn't go as smoothly as anyone hoped. From the start, Scott faced a series of challenges that hindered his ability to shine in WWE. Physical injuries, some lingering from his grueling WCW days, severely limited his performance. Wrestling is an incredibly demanding sport, and the wear and tear on Scott's body was evident. The high-impact moves, constant travel, and pressure to deliver at every show took their toll. WWE's schedule was notoriously grueling, often requiring wrestlers to perform multiple times a week, which can be unforgiving for someone with an injury history. His most notable WWE storyline came in 2003 during a high-profile feud with Triple H, one of WWE's biggest stars and the company's de facto leader in the ring. The storyline had potential, pitting the brash and unpredictable Steiner against the calculating and dominant Triple H. Unfortunately, the feud never reached the heights fans had hoped for. Injuries kept Scott from consistently performing at his best, and the chemistry between the two didn't fully click on television. Matches felt lackluster compared to the energy Scott was known for in WCW, leaving fans disappointed. The TNA experience, triumphs and turmoil. After his WWE departure, Scott Steiner sought to reignite his career in the burgeoning world of total non-stop action wrestling, TNA, now known as Impact Wrestling. TNA was a newer promotion aiming to carve out its own place in the wrestling landscape, and it offered Scott a platform to showcase his talents again. Here, Scott found moments of triumph, exciting matches, memorable storylines, and the chance to connect with a passionate fanbase that appreciated his larger-than-life persona. Scott's time in TNA saw him involved in some of the promotion's key storylines. His immense presence and natural charisma made him a valuable asset, and he could still bring the intensity and power fans remembered. However, behind the scenes, things weren't always smooth sailing. Scott's famously outspoken nature and fierce independence sometimes clashed with management, especially with big names like Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff, who were running the company during his tenure. Hogan and Bischoff brought experience and star power to TNA, but their management styles sometimes created friction with wrestlers who were used to doing things their own way. Scott, never one to hold back his opinions, often found himself at odds with decisions he disagreed with. He felt that certain creative choices and management tactics were holding the company back. Unfortunately, rather than addressing these concerns privately, Scott's frustration sometimes spilled over into public outbursts. This tension culminated in a very public fallout in 2012 that shocked fans and industry insiders alike. Public fallout, the social media storm. In 2012, social media was becoming a dominant force, reshaping how celebrities, athletes, and entertainers interacted with fans and each other. Scott Steiner was one of the first wrestlers to embrace this new platform, but not always in the way management hoped. After growing increasingly frustrated with Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff's leadership at TNA, Scott took to social media to voice his grievances. His posts were raw, unfiltered, and often harsh. He called out Hogan and Bischoff directly, accusing them of ruining the company and making poor decisions. His words went beyond criticism. He included insults and even threats, which caught many by surprise given the usually guarded nature of wrestling promotions when it comes to public disputes. This public airing of dirty laundry was unprecedented in wrestling at the time. Fans and fellow wrestlers were divided. Some admired Scott's honesty and willingness to speak his mind, while others saw it as unprofessional and damaging. The wrestling business thrives on image and respect, and Scott's social media storm shook those norms. His outbursts highlighted the growing pains wrestling was experiencing as it adapted to the digital age, where social media gives performers a powerful voice but also creates new pitfalls. Ultimately, this public feud contributed to Scott's departure from TNA. It was a turbulent time in his career, but it also underscored his complex personality, someone who was passionate and outspoken but sometimes struggled to navigate the boundaries between personal feelings and professional conduct. The 1998 Road Rage Incident, a serious controversy. While Scott Steiner's career has been marked by many highs and moments of brilliance, it's important to acknowledge one of the darkest and most serious incidents in his life, the 1998 Road Rage episode that shocked the wrestling community. The incident occurred in a moment of extreme anger and poor judgment. After being told that a highway exit ramp was closed, Scott lost his temper in a way that went far beyond the usual frustrations of driving. He struck a highway worker with his truck, not once, but twice, causing serious injuries. The worker was left badly hurt, and the incident quickly made headlines far beyond the wrestling world. Scott was arrested and charged with aggravated assault and making terrorist threats. The charges reflected the severity of what had happened, and the legal consequences were significant. Scott ultimately pleaded guilty, receiving probation and fines as part of his sentence. The road rage incident was a stark and sobering reminder that the aggressive, intense character he portrayed in the ring sometimes spilled into real life, with serious consequences. For fans and wrestling insiders alike, the incident was difficult to reconcile. Here was a man who could entertain millions with his wild persona, but who had also crossed a dangerous line in his personal life. The controversy left a lasting impact on Scott's reputation and served as a cautionary tale about the pressures and emotional struggles athletes can face. Steroid rumors, the question of natural strength. One of the most talked about aspects of Scott Steiner's wrestling career was his absolutely massive, sculpted physique. To say he was big was an understatement. He was a mountain of muscle, with arms that looked like tree trunks and a body that seemed almost impossible to achieve naturally. This incredible transformation fascinated fans but also sparked a never-ending wave of speculation and rumors. Was Scott Steiner using steroids? Throughout the height of his career, whispers and outright accusations about steroid and performance-enhancing drug use followed him everywhere. Wrestling fans, commentators, and critics debated the topic, sometimes fiercely. In the world of professional wrestling, where physique is often just as important as skill and charisma, these rumors are not uncommon, but Scott's sheer size put him under an especially intense microscope. Scott, for his part, always firmly denied using steroids or any illegal substances. He maintained that his physique was the result of a rigorous workout regimen, strict dieting, and years of amateur wrestling training that gave him a solid foundation to build on. To many, his natural athleticism and wrestling background lent credibility to his denials. But these rumors sparked a bigger conversation in the wrestling industry and among fans. Wrestling is a physically demanding sport that requires wrestlers to maintain an imposing image. The pressure to look larger than life can push athletes toward dangerous paths, including steroid use or other unhealthy methods to bulk up quickly. Many wrestlers from that era, and even today, have spoken about the intense pressure to maintain a certain body type to get ahead or stay relevant. Scott's massive physique, while undoubtedly impressive, came with concerns about health and longevity. Steroid use, if it had been part of his regimen, carries risks including heart problems, hormonal imbalances, and other serious health issues. Whether or not Scott actually used steroids, the rumors cast a shadow that complicated his legacy in the eyes of some fans and critics. Conflicts within the wrestling world, feuds and fallout. Scott Steiner has never been one to mince words. His career wasn't just about slamming opponents in the ring, it was also marked by plenty of clashes outside the ropes. Known for his outspoken and sometimes abrasive personality, Scott frequently found himself at odds with fellow wrestlers, promoters, and officials. This reputation as a fiery, confrontational figure made him both respected and feared backstage. For some in the wrestling business, Scott's bluntness was a breath of fresh air. In an industry that often requires performers to keep quiet about backstage politics or company decisions, Scott's willingness to speak his mind was seen as a sign of authenticity and strength. He wasn't afraid to stand up for what he believed in, even if it meant ruffling feathers or creating tension. But for others, Scott's forthright nature was problematic. His tendency to be blunt and sometimes insulting rubbed many the wrong way. There were several heated disagreements and even physical altercations reported over the years. Some wrestlers and promoters found him difficult to work with, seeing him as unpredictable and volatile. Stories circulated of Scott getting into shouting matches or fights that escalated beyond verbal spats, further fueling his reputation as a troublemaker. Yet, these conflicts also stemmed from a deeper complexity. Scott Steiner is a passionate man who cares deeply about wrestling and his place in it. Sometimes, this passion translated into frustration when things didn't go his way or when he felt others weren't doing their jobs properly. The wrestling business is notoriously stressful and competitive, and Scott's personality sometimes collided with the high-pressure environment. His fiery nature was part of what made him so compelling as a performer. Those emotions bled into his character and promos, adding intensity and unpredictability. It's hard to separate Scott Steiner the man from the persona he cultivated. Both were larger than life, both complicated, and both integral to his unique legacy. Life beyond the ring, family and slower days. After decades of grueling travel schedules, high-stakes matches, and public controversies, Scott Steiner has embraced a slower, quieter pace of life. Now in his 60s, he no longer wrestles full-time, choosing instead to make occasional appearances on the independent wrestling circuit, delighting longtime fans with glimpses of the energy and charisma he was famous for. But away from the bright lights and roaring crowds, Scott's world looks very different. Since 2000, he has been married to his wife, Krista, and together they have built a family life that stands in contrast to the chaos of professional wrestling. With 2 children and a stable home base, Scott has found something that many wrestlers struggle with, a sense of balance and peace. Family has become a cornerstone of Scott's life. In interviews and appearances, he often talks about how important his wife and kids are to him. This personal side of Scott is rarely seen during his wrestling promos but reveals a more grounded and reflective individual. Wrestling may have been his career, but his family is his heart. The shift to a quieter lifestyle hasn't meant that Scott has lost his passion for wrestling. He occasionally steps into the ring for special events or independent shows, reconnecting with fans who grew up watching him dominate. These appearances often feel like celebrations of a storied career rather than a comeback attempt, showing respect for his legacy and the sport he loves. Retiring from full-time wrestling has also allowed Scott to focus on his health and well-being, something many wrestlers wrestle with as they age. The physical toll of decades in the ring is immense, and stepping back gives him the chance to enjoy life on his own terms. Scott Steiner's enduring legacy, more than just a wrestler. Scott Steiner's career is far more than a collection of matches and championships, it's a story of transformation, charisma, and innovation that left a lasting mark on professional wrestling. As one half of the Steiner brothers, Scott helped revolutionize tag team wrestling. Alongside his brother Rick, their combination of raw power and technical wrestling skill was groundbreaking. They brought a level of athleticism and intensity to tag team matches that hadn't been seen before. Their matches were often show stealers, and Scott's signature move, the Frankensteiner, became one of the most iconic maneuvers in wrestling history, inspiring countless wrestlers who came after. When Scott reinvented himself as Big Poppa Pump, he didn't just change his look, he changed the game. His flamboyant style, booming voice, and wild promos introduced a new kind of wrestling character, larger than life, brash, and unpredictable. His promos, especially the legendary Steiner Math, blended humor, intimidation, and sheer eccentricity in a way that left fans both entertained and amazed. Scott Steiner's influence goes beyond his in-ring work. He helped pave the way for future generations to embrace boldness and individuality, showing that wrestling was as much about personality as it was about athleticism. His presence demanded attention, and whether fans loved him or hated him, they couldn't look away. Despite the controversies, the rumors, and the conflicts, Scott Steiner's name remains synonymous with passion, strength, and authenticity. His legacy is a rich tapestry of highs and lows, triumphs and trials, that makes him one of wrestling's most unforgettable figures. In the end, Scott Steiner isn't just remembered as a wrestler, he's remembered as a force of nature. His story reminds us that behind every legend is a human being, complex and flawed, but undeniably remarkable. The complex nature of a wrestling legend. Scott Steiner's journey through professional wrestling is a story filled with towering highs and dramatic lows, a roller coaster ride that makes him one of the most fascinating figures in the history of the sport. What sets Scott apart isn't just his incredible athletic achievements or his unforgettable persona as Big Poppa Pump, it's the complicated, deeply human story behind the muscle, tattoos, and wild promos. Throughout his career, Scott faced challenges that went well beyond the scripted drama inside the ring. Injuries took a toll on his body, sometimes sidelining him when fans wanted to see him at his best. More than once, personal struggles and controversies threatened to overshadow his accomplishments. But these setbacks also made him real. They showed that behind the loud voice and towering physique was a man navigating the same struggles many face: anger, frustration, mistakes, and growth. For fans, Scott Steiner embodies the paradox of professional wrestling itself, a blend of performance and reality, fantasy and raw human emotion. The characters they cheer or jeer are crafted with flair and showmanship, but underneath, those wrestlers live real lives with all their complexities. Scott's story is a reminder that heroes and villains in wrestling are never just black and white, they are nuanced, messy, and human. Career milestones, a timeline of triumphs. Scott Steiner's career spans nearly 4 decades, and in that time, he's left an indelible mark on the sport. Here's a look at some of the key moments that defined his journey. 1986, professional debut in Continental Wrestling Association. Scott began his professional career wrestling under his real name in a smaller promotion. These formative years were crucial, laying the groundwork for his future success and teaching him the ropes of the wrestling business. Late 1980s to 1990s, success with the Steiner brothers across major promotions. Teaming up with his brother Rick, Scott became part of one of the most dominant and influential tag teams ever. The Steiner brothers tore through promotions like the NWA, WCW, and WWF, capturing multiple tag team championships and wowing fans with their unique blend of technical skill and explosive power. Late 1990s, reinvents himself as Big Poppa Pump. Scott's shift from tag team wrestler to single star marked a new era. As Big Poppa Pump, he developed a bold new look and personality that was impossible to ignore: massive muscles, bleached hair, and wild promos that entertained and shocked in equal measure. 2000, wins WCW World Heavyweight Championship. Reaching the pinnacle of his singles career, Scott captured the prestigious WCW World Heavyweight Championship. This achievement cemented his place among wrestling's elite and proved he could carry a company as a solo act. 2002 to 2004, WWE run hampered by injuries. When WCW was purchased by WWE, many hoped Scott's success would continue on wrestling's biggest stage. Unfortunately, a series of injuries and limited opportunities prevented him from reaching his full potential during this time. 2012, public fallout with TNA management. Scott's outspoken nature came to the forefront in a very public way when he openly criticized TNA management, including Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff, on social media. This highly visible conflict highlighted the challenges of navigating backstage politics and personal frustrations in the digital age. 2023, final recorded match in Michigan. Even in his 60s, Scott stepped into the ring for what would be his last recorded match, returning to his home state. This appearance symbolized a full-circle moment in a career defined by passion and perseverance. Final thoughts: the legend of Big Poppa Pump. Scott Steiner's career is a powerful testament to how charisma, raw talent, and a fearless willingness to push boundaries can create a lasting legacy. Wrestling fans don't just remember him for the titles he won or the matches he stole, they remember the energy he brought every time he stepped into the ring, the wild promos that kept them talking long after the show ended, and the larger-than-life personality that made him impossible to ignore. Big Poppa Pump isn't just a nickname, it's a symbol of a wrestler who broke molds and challenged expectations. Scott's journey teaches us that success isn't just about perfection or smooth sailing, it's about resilience, authenticity, and owning every part of your story, even the messy parts. Whether you admired Scott for his incredible in-ring skill or chuckled at his wild antics and infamous promos, one thing is undeniable: Scott Steiner is one of professional wrestling's most unique and enduring figures. His legacy continues to influence wrestlers and entertain fans around the world, reminding us all that in wrestling, as in life, the most unforgettable characters are those who dare to be unapologetically themselves. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more valuable updates.